I hope I don't lose it while I'm up here. One, Dr. Kesselman, Dr. Farris, and Larry James were responsible for everything that has happened in these last 25 or 6 years. They're the ones who pushed it. Dr. Kesselman pushed through the full-time coaches and everything and has helped open up the world to Stockton athletics. Coach Haynes was up here last year with the national championship soccer team, and they got in on their 10th anniversary. I can just tell him, wait until their 25th anniversary when they get together and the stories get even better. It's a long time ago. If you look at that picture in the program, you can tell how long ago it is. Look at Coach Crowley's tie. Somebody snipped the bottom of it with scissors. Coach Heck was my other assistant. He was still annoyed he wasn't still a player instead of a coach. But it was a long time ago. It was our second year here. We didn't know what to expect. We still were trying to figure everything out. And the next thing you know, like Dr. Kesselman said, only one team had made the NCAA tournament before us. No one had ever won the NJAC. And the next thing you know, here we are winning the NJAC. At the end of the game, Donald picked up the water buckets and he dumped it on Coach Crowley and myself. Well, if you know Coach Crowley, he was sick for 2 weeks after. He is a health risk. We won the NJAC tournament, and now here we are. We're in the NCAA, and the next thing, we're going to the Final Four. It was kind of unexpected to everybody, including the school. No one had ever seen it happen before. And what not too many would know, only the people around a long time ago, in the game to go to that we beat Widener in overtime to go to the Final Four, George Briscoe ripped up his knee and tore his ACL. And he did not play when we went to the Final Four. And had he played, I really believe we would have played for the national championship in 1987. But that's the only thing you can ever think back to you'd like to have seen change maybe a little bit. We set the kind of the bar for everybody from there. I started saying at different banquets, there's no reason why basketball has to be the only team that can win. Everybody can win at Stockton. And we started getting some different coaches, and we got the right coaches. Coach Lenahan, Coach Haynes then with soccer, he's taken us to a national championship. Coach Wilkins got the girls to a soccer Final Four. The volleyball team has been tearing up the NJAC the last 10 years. Stockton athletics has come a long way, but we can always sit there and say, this team did it first. And they made a lot of their dreams come true, and they made a lot of dreams come true for the coaches as well. I do have to tell you two stories. I got to tell you a story about each of the boys who made it into the Hall of Fame. One's easy. The second one, I hope it's one I may lose it. George mentioned earlier when he was up here, his grandpa was a basketball fanatic for him. And if he doesn't remember the games exactly, I do. We played Ramapo on a Saturday afternoon. His grandpa was at the game. We won the game. I went home about 10 o'clock that night. George calls me, and he's crying like a baby. His grandpa had gone home, sat down in a chair, and passed away. So the next week, we're going to play Willie P. on Wednesday night, and that's one of the days of the wake. So Coach Crowley got everybody in the vans, picked me up on the Parkway, and we went to Newark to the funeral parlor before we'd go to Patterson. So we're at the funeral parlor, half hour, whatever, And finally, I said, okay, we have to go before we get stuck in the traffic. George says, wait a minute. He goes in the back. He comes out with his bag. I said, what the hell are you doing? He says, I'm playing. My grandfather would have wanted me to play. He played. We scored 118 points that night. We have never had that many points in a game ever again. We beat Patterson by 60, 118-58. And everybody was so juiced that he came to play. There was no way we were going to lose the basketball game that night. And that's how George felt about everything and about the school and the program. For Donald, this was something small that only he and I actually know. I said it to him before. This is where I get a little shaky. When we went to Roanoke, I took my daughter, who was in the 7th grade with us, and she sat on the end of the bench. When the game was over on Saturday night, we cut down the nets for winning the region. The tournament was structured a little differently then than it is now, and that was considered the regional. And when everybody was cutting down the nets, yeah, Donald went and got my daughter. And made sure she cut down one of the pieces of the net as well as the players. And I've never forgotten that. It wasn't a big deal to anybody else but me and the thoughtful guy that he is. And everything that he does here, he deserves, because that's the kind of guy he was and still is. So it was a magical year. Magic didn't stay with us out there because we were hurting without George, but it was a great year. It set the tone, I guess, for Stockton athletics. 22 years later, the men's basketball team goes to the Final Four again in 2009 in Salem, Virginia. And I will say this, 3 of the guys on that team, knowing it, did make their way to Salem, Virginia for the weekend. And 2 of them brought their sons with them. And Byron Gerry, who's here tonight. John Connell is not here tonight. And then Pat Millay, he brought his son with him as well. Because all of these guys sitting out here still remember Stockton State with all of the fondest memories that they can. And so at this point, rather than tell any more stories myself or anything else, I'd like to bring Pat Millay up to say a few words about the team from 1987. Pat?